Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here to recap SEC basketball games from Tuesday, February the 22nd. That was Wednesday night. Full disclosure, our man Blake is losing his voice. We started one of these already, had to start over, and so we're going to keep our takes to a minimum, and particularly his. All right, Blake, I'll own it. I'll start here. Anytime I say a night of SEC basketball or imply it is barely worth watching, here's what this means. That means, folks, stay glued to your TV the whole night because stuff's about to happen. And stuff darn near happened last night, and in some cases did. You had Vanderbilt getting its NCAA tournament hopes crushed by an LSU team that had not won a game this calendar year. You nearly had the stunner of the year when South Carolina took Alabama to overtime and missed a beyond a half-court shot by that much after hitting a beyond half-court shot in the first half. Same guy, Meechie Johnson. You had Florida proving it wasn't dead yet, taking Kentucky to the wire almost. You had a fan grabbing a player on the floor in that game. And you had Auburn nearly losing a game to Ole Miss that, frankly, might have knocked Auburn off the bubble. We'll do bracketology probably in another one. But in any case, Blake, what a crazy night of basketball in the SEC. And let's start in Baton Rouge where, speaking of crazy, and I checked Ken Palm to see who would name the MVP in this game. Vanderbilt's Liam Robbins, who has not been outplayed by anybody in a long time, goes to Baton Rouge, has 21 points, double-digit rebounds, and finished one block shy of a triple-double. Yet he wasn't even the best big man on the floor. That was KJ Williams, who scored 35 points. It seemed like LSU could not miss down the stretch in the second half, or really the entire second half. So LSU gets a much-needed win to restore a little morale there. KJ Williams had to he didn't have the player of the night performance. We'll get to that later. But, I mean, if you were expecting what happened in Baton Rouge on Wednesday night to be anticlimactic, you were surprised, and I think Vanderbilt fans are certainly very deflated after a loss that the Commodores couldn't afford to take on.
Yeah, I said I just thought this was a tricky game for them. And I told you after we recorded the video, the predictions. Like I said, I wish I would have picked LSU because I think they're going to beat them. And I don't say that often, but I just it's one of those games. And I don't know why. I just feel like Vanderbilt has never played great there. They've had some games like that, and I just feel like the ultimate, everything to lose set up for Vanderbilt, nothing to lose for LSU. Other than just one more game tacked onto a 14-game losing streak, and they had their best offensive performance of SEC play, 84 points, most they've scored. 84 points, the third highest point total this season for LSU. And, yeah, I mean, we said the matchup would be Robbins versus Williams. It was. And, KJ Williams just had a monster game, 35 points. But, Robbins 23, 11, and 9, with those 9 being blocks, of course. It was fun to watch those two. But, you said it. I mean, Vanderbilt is not an NCAA tournament team right now. That completely knocks them out of the conversation. That was the one we said they could not lose. They could go 3-1, but that was the one they couldn't lose, and they lost it. And so, disappointing for Vanderbilt to say the least. But give LSU some credit. That's a team too, as we said, on a 14-game losing streak, hadn't quit, and they were due to get one somewhere. And unfortunately for Vanderbilt, it just came at the wrong time. So.
Okay, in Gainesville, I thought Florida might be non-competitive with Kentucky after losing Colin Castleton. Jason Jatoba just is not nearly the same player that Castleton is. Oscar Sheboy took advantage of that, went 12 of 13 from two-point range last night. Florida, you got to hand to the Gators, man. Your guy Riley Kugel played really well, got 24 points. Kwasi Reeves gave him 16. But Kentucky is continuing to play very well at the right time, and we'll get into some bracketology. But Kentucky is darn near lock status for the NCAA tournament. Maybe give the Cats one more win, but Kentucky took care of business last night and was not an easy environment. Again, you had fans literally grabbing players on the floor in the middle of the game, and just a wild scene. But hats off to the Cats. Chris Livingston plays well again. 11 boards in that one. 10 points. And Kentucky marches on.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, because it was just, one of those games that Florida kept making a run, and you wondered, right, if that was gonna, ultimately Florida maybe makes that run that wins the game. But we said, just with Kentucky right now, I feel like these last two games, they built some confidence. And, I think this is a team that is now just finding ways to win versus, finding ways to lose some of those other games that they have. And I said I thought once again the guy I've talked about for a couple weeks now, it's really starting to come on, is Chris Livingston. And think about what Kentucky did. They basically went 5 in, and that's it. Like, they basically played 5 guys. Reeves 39 minutes, Livingston 39 minutes, Wallace 38 minutes, Sheboy 38 minutes, Toppin 35 minutes. Frederick and Wheeler still not playing yet. So I thought that was more impressive maybe than anything. It's just those 5 guys just said, hey, we're going to will ourselves to a victory. And that's what happened, right? Is they did that. And yeah, credit to Kentucky, because it was a game, like I said, where Florida would start making a run, and you wondered, is Kentucky going to be able to hold on to this thing? Or are they going to kind of, go backwards in the opposite direction? And yeah, it just didn't happen. And obviously 13 offensive rebounds they were talking about on the broadcast. Just not having Castleton on the other side, you can score easier. You don't have to worry about getting your shot blocked as much. Florida only had 1 block, and it just allows you to take easier shots. Only had to take 13 threes, did Kentucky. And that's, I think, a big part of it, is they were just able to get easier shots. Sheboy obviously, had a better night because he went 12 of 13. And yeah, just I don't want to say like it was, a must win by any means for Kentucky, but like that now adds them to the group of Kentucky sitting pretty right now. And again, we wouldn't have thought that a week and a half ago. So
South Carolina has not played well at home. We have been over that ad nauseum for 2 months now, but boy, did the Gamecocks ever do that last night. Carolina was down. Chico Carter, I believe. Yeah, it was. And still, despite that, takes Alabama to overtime. Brandon Miller, my goodness, 43 minutes, 41 points, 2 blocks, 3 steals, 8 boards, and got the game-winning shot on a drive to his left where G.G. Jackson was driving him, or was guarding him. They went isolation. He drives the lane, drops one in from close range. And Michi Johnson, that's the guy I think that, like, if you're – I tweeted this last night. My life is depending on I need somebody to hit a half-court shot for me. He might be my guy because he hit one in the first half, and he didn't miss one at the end of the game by much. Blake back-rimmed it. And if that goes in, that's the stunner of the year in college basketball. But it didn't go in. And, look, Alabama didn't play very well outside Miller, but he was certainly enough.
yeah, just for reference, if you're just watching this video, watch our video from yesterday if you want our thoughts on the Brandon Miller situation. We discussed that at the end of it yesterday, so I don't really see the need to go back into that here. Yes, obviously, that was the talk heading into this game. If we just look at the game itself, yeah, I mean, what do you say, right? The guy had 41 points, and just not often you see that in the SEC, much less from a freshman. And, you kind of look at everything else, and, it was one of those games where Alabama had to claw for everything. They really did. Like, they just had to, I don't know, like, there was a point where I think South Carolina's going to win this thing. And, I said that multiple times during the game, and it just looked to be trending that direction because, you had South Carolina, as you talked about, getting stuff from other guys other than G.G. Jackson. And, like you said, Michi Johnson and Wright and those guys just doing what they're doing. Um, it's just it was like it was quite a setup there for that game. And, it's just Alabama did what they, had to do, and they just kept getting the ball to the guy that was scoring, and everyone else didn't really have to do a whole lot. It really was kind of a game that was just taken over basically by one player. And um, you know, not to knock what Gigi Jackson did either, because I thought he had a really good game. But it's like when you look at what the other guy did, that's what's going to get all the attention. And obviously, as we said, kind of everything surrounding the game going into it. But yeah, I mean, I remember like the what was it, the quadruple overtime game several years ago that Alabama and South Carolina played in Columbia. I started to wonder if it was going to get to that direction because you thought maybe it's about to go to a second overtime, but then game winner, Miller hits the game winner, and that was that. So yeah, if there's something we did learn, I guess, from this is that a close loss to a good team will move you up in the net, because South Carolina moved up 13 spots in the net, I guess, just by losing in overtime to Alabama. Um, so yeah, I don't. Other than that, as we said, I don't know what else you say about the game. And as I mentioned, if you want kind of our thoughts on the whole deal, entering the game, that was on our reaction video yesterday, and obviously more statements have come out since then. So yeah, that obviously adds to the story. So
Okay. Another nightcap. Auburn and Ole Miss. Didn't give Ole Miss much of a prayer in this one, but Ole Miss was pretty good. Ole Miss took Auburn to the brink. Matt Morrell was good. But for Auburn, Wendell Green had one of his better games of the year, and the Tigers survived what could have been a very damaging loss to their NCAA tournament hopes, which we think are, not going to say perilous, but Auburn is not quite on the bubble yet, but it could go that way, and I think it certainly would have gone that way had Ole Miss pulled that one out in Neville Arena last night.
no, it's a must win. We said that going in. I mean, that was as must win as it gets, given what's on the remaining schedule. Um, they still got to go to Kentucky, Alabama, Tennessee at home, so they had to win that one. And I've told you, and I don't know if it's going to hold, but I think Auburn's that team that can. Anyone that thinks Auburn's safe to make the NCAA tournament, I'm not quite there. And we'll talk about that in the bracketology video. But this was one they had to have. And yeah, I mean, Wendell Green once again, able to make some big shots, gets to the free throw line. Broome kind of had the type of game I thought that he could have against this Ole Miss team, just given the matchup. And he goes with 19 points, 8 rebounds, had 6 blocks. And so, yeah, I thought that was, a big part of the equation. Jalen Williams, who we've talked about a lot this season, continues, just to do some things at the right time. They kind of, I think that really helped Auburn push the game in their direction a little bit more. And yeah, I mean, it's just, you could tell like that was a game where as it's going on, you're like, you can tell with Auburn, like they know that they understood the setup. Like this was a must win game. All the pressure's on them. But to find a way to win it, it was not pretty, was not easy at times. Ole Miss made their run, and that was kind of that. But I mean, I think this was just such an important game for Auburn, and now you kind of look at the way it played out, and now it's basically you're staring down 3 very, very tough games to finish the season. And again, we'll talk more about that in bracketology and what that'll mean for Auburn. But I just thought this one was kind of like, obviously it's a different situation than Alabama, but this was one where as these games are going on, you're starting to look at it and saying, boy, is the momentum really swinging in the direction of South Carolina and Ole Miss in these 2 games? And for a time there it was, but give credit to Auburn making the plays down the stretch, and another very high free throw shooting type game. But yeah, Auburn had to win it, and they did.
Yeah, speaking of South Carolina, I meant to mention Lamont Paris has done a really good job keeping that team engaged with the
Oh yeah.
distraction with the G.G. Jackson situation for a bit. Seems like that's been rectified. Again, he had the least talented, I thought maybe the least talented team in the league, and certainly the least experienced team in the league coming in terms of what his guys had done at the Division I level. I think to keep a situation held together the way he has, and to darn near beat Alabama last night. I don't know. I think if you're a South Carolina fan, you probably woke up this morning feeling a little bit better about the state of your basketball program. Okay, we
Well,
went shorter on this, as you know, because Blake's voice, our man just isn't feeling well, and we're trying to bring you stuff, but balance his needs too. So with that, Blake, I'll let you give us some final thoughts before we end today.
no, I'll give you a couple more minutes here. That way people don't think we're slacking. Barry's whining at the door over here. It's chaos. But no, I mean, you point out South Carolina. We said that a couple weeks ago. They lost that overtime game at Georgia, and we said, look, this is a team that hasn't quit, and really since that point, that's what, almost a month now. They've been right there in all these games. Really, I mean, when you think about it, like I know they lost the Mississippi State game by 15 at home, but every other game, like they have been right there at different points, and so I think that is something that, look, South Carolina, I don't think that's a team that's gonna make a run in the tournament or anything. But it is interesting because, like you said, it's now they're not just playing well, on the road, right? They're doing some things at home too. So yeah, give them credit. They haven't quit. It was a team that, as we talked about, just one that from the start of the season, you just felt like they were a team that was going to really have some issues. But yeah, I mean, look, are they going to win any of their remaining games? I think they can. They got Georgia at home. They got to go to Tennessee and Mississippi State. That'll be a challenge, but yeah, give them credit because I think we were pretty much sold that they were going to be the number 14 team in the SEC tournament. I don't think that's going to happen anymore. I think that, again, they're going to, I don't know. I'm not saying that I would, let's say they finish as the 12, right, and win the 12-13 game and then play the 5. If I'm the 5, I probably wouldn't love that, just the way, kind of the momentum's going with them. So, yeah, shout out to South Carolina. They are playing a lot better basketball, and like we said, it was just an interesting slate of games because it goes back to the beginning, right? Like you said, I told you, boy, when you see one of these on paper that look just completely predictable, it's never the way it is, and just was not that way with this. And it just Vanderbilt, obviously, I think the disappointment of putting yourself in position to be in position, right? That's the phrase. And then to kind of take yourself out of that by losing that game, it's one of those things where now you're just kind of completely out of the conversation. And, you look at just where, again, Kentucky, the confidence they're playing with now, Auburn keeping itself in the mix because that's one that can take you out of it if you lose at home to Ole Miss. And then, of course, the Alabama, situation. It's just, yeah, it's the SEC tournament is not far away, and it's already setting up, I think, to be one of the wildest we've seen in recent years. So,
Yeah, a lot going on. We'll have you covered. We got baseball stuff coming. We've got several football videos up this week that our man Blaine did for us. Best way to get all that stuff is hit subscribe. That costs you nothing. You won't miss anything. We intend to do a bracketology, so you should see that pretty soon. If by chance we don't, it'll be because our man Blake just can't speak. And so we're trying to, again, balance the need to give you the content you're accustomed to getting with trying to save his voice so he can talk over the weekend. Anyway, he's Blake Lovell. I'm Chris Lee. We're Southeastern 14. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.